I just want to start off this video by saying, thank you for to those who watched my last video, a lot of you guys said that my last video has helped you guys as well, and that really means a lot to me. And I originally just wanted to make these videos as like a journal entry, and that's just what I wanted to do. But if these are also helping with you, that's also great. But I think I'm gonna start off every video by smoking a cigarette. Right now, I'm smoking the Marb Golds, the Italian versions. So, but today, like this is something that's been on my mind for quite a while now, and I feel like we have almost like this desirability to be sad. We have this desire to be sad almost, and I feel like even though no one wants to be sad, we almost choose to stay in this like state of sadness. And a lot of the things I'm gonna say, like, I feel like it's pretty much common knowledge. I'm not saying anything revolutionary, but oftentimes I feel like we misunderstand sadness as something we need to like get out of, and something that we need to feel better about. But um, I feel like a lot of times people choose to be sad because it feels familiar, and it brings comfortness too. Something that I struggled with, uh, especially when I felt numb and emotionless. I would purposely make myself cry because that was the being sad was the only emotion that felt real. Crying felt like a real emotion rather than like trying to be happy and stuff. And it's also the easiest way to get out of uh that feeling of emotionless. And though no one wants to feel sad, I feel like truly no one deep down wants to be sad. I feel like we stay to be in this sort of sadness because, that's only the real emotion. That's the easiest emotion for us to feel. And instead of being instead of forcing ourselves to feel happy. And I feel like in society, we often like prioritize and like push like positivity, um, but I feel like sadness is uh just a way to feel emotionally honest with yourself. It acknowledges the complexity of our struggles that we're dealing with, and I feel like it's okay to feel sad as long as you just let your emotions feel that way. And sadness gives space for like the truth, and especially like when you listen to sad music, it brings comfort. And I think a lot of people just struggle with stepping out of that comfort zone because I would even tell myself that I would choose to suffer uh I would choose to suffer in this comfortability rather than choosing to suffer of this fear of the unknown. And I think that's the thing a lot of people why choose to stick to being sad because they're afraid of change. And even though when almost the answers are right in front of them almost, I would or for me at least, I would purposely not like act upon those answers because I was just being cowardly, and I was just afraid of change, and afraid of the unknown. And when we're sad, it feels familiar, and it connects us to within ourselves. I have my notes here again, and I feel like sadness can sometimes be a part of our identity, especially for those who like have struggled and suffered a lot. And even into today's society, I feel like there's almost like this romanticism of sadness, especially if we look at like music and like art and stuff. you know, it becomes almost appealing, and it grants like this like sense of like importance or like depth and uniqueness, you know. And I feel like people long for sadness because they need to cry. That's what at least that's what I did, you know, to release like pent up emotion inside. And oftentimes we carry like these suppressed emotions, and you know, sadness provides an acceptable outlet, and just it lets you go of holding those it lets you go from holding back, and it almost emotionally cleans you. And it's totally okay to feel sad, you know. There's nothing wrong with being sad. Um, just like as long as you just like feel those emotions in the end, I feel like it's gonna be all right. And I think a lot of times why people feel sad is to avoid that numbness. Um, you know, sometimes when I wake up and I'm just like going throughout my day, you know, sometimes I would just feel emotionless, and I would, you know, I've said this before, I would purposely make myself cry. And, you know, being sad almost makes us feel alive. But I think the biggest thing to just like get out of that state, and what has helped me, even though I still struggle with a lot of things, what has made it become better was just realizing those emotions and just becoming aware of things. And I feel like I looked at the end goal most of the time. You know, I would always tell myself, when am I going to stop feeling like this? Or when will I feel better? And etc. And instead of just taking things day by day, I would always just like, especially when I would write in my journal, I would always just talk about like when's the day am I going to get better? Once I started changing my perspective a little bit and just like, you know, living, taking things day by day, that's what has helped me feel less, I guess, sad. And being sad doesn't really have to be a bad thing, you know. And I might repeat myself a lot when I talk, but I think, you know, I was reading this text on psychology, and it says that like when you're sad, you know, our brains starts replaying events, and we analyze and reframe, and they call this process the rumination. And while it is unhealthy, you know, I feel like it can also be like a tool for growth. And I feel like people often seek sadness as a way to understand something that feels unresolved, and you're just trying to figure out why you're hurt. And a lot of times, I think people are just scared of vulnerability. Um, you know, once you have to um, change that mindset of not wanting to be sad, and you know, you almost have to make yourself vulnerable. And I feel like for me, like I was just scared of that, you know, because no one really likes to step out of their comfort zones. You know, even when I was coming here to study abroad, you know, in Rome, I was very nervous and scared because, you know, I've never been to Europe, and I've just never experienced uh, a different lifestyle almost. You know. But in the end, like, I am very grateful that I am here now because I feel like I've grown a lot from coming here. And I feel like happiness is just a very vulnerable thing. Like, and people also tend to choose to be sad because, you know, they're scared of false positivity. Sometimes when I would do the right things and try and make myself feel better, and um, I thought that I was on the right path, and then something would happen, or my thoughts would come to me at night again, or something like that, and it feels like I lost all progress, and I think I chose to be sad because, it gave me like I was just tired of feeling like this like false hope and sort of and it almost feels like a hope. And even though it doesn't feel good to be sad, it feels familiar and it feels known. But I feel like choosing sadness, it feels less terrifying than, having the surprise of trying to feel better and stuff, having the surprises and trying to feeling better and stuff like that. Um, I think that what helped me was that just like taking a step back and just like looking at my emotions from uh a grand scheme of things, and just like I feel like once you start to realize your sadness while you're feeling sad, and like telling yourself that you no longer want to feel this way, it helps a lot because um you're becoming more aware of the situation on why. And I think the biggest takeaway was just like not looking at the end goal. I've said this already, and I think taking things day by day is what has helped me the most. And another thing that why I was so afraid to change and to let go was, as I talked about in my last video, was because of our ego, or at least my ego. Um, because I was just so scared of the uncertainty. Um, Another thing, like I feel like being sad, it creates meaning almost. It sadness typically comes from when we like lose something or we're grieving somebody or things of that nature, and a lot of times people would tell me like, these things would make you, these things that has happened to you made you shape who you are today. And though like I do see like truth in that, and I do definitely believe in that, but I feel like nobody wants to experience those things that has happened in the first place. And I think the biggest takeaway is just like, I feel like I am repeating myself now, but just like, just like being in that comfortability like made it feel safe. And I'm not saying when you try to step out your comfort zone, to just go all David Goggins and start like reading books and eating grass-fed steak and stop eating Red 40 and seed oils and shit like that. I'm not saying that you're gonna step out your comfort is to do these types of things, but just like, I think just like living your day how it is currently, and just doing like small things of change will help you. And even people have told me, like I've even done things uh to like make myself feel better, like eat out alone and just like hang out, spend time with more friends. And I would say I was on top of everything that I've done. I am like pretty productive on certain things, but in the end, like when I would go to bed and stuff, I feel like those emotions would always still be there. And I feel like that's just like depression in general. And I hate using this word, but like, high functioning depression, I feel like that's just like a buzzword. And I don't know why we have to like labelize everything, labelize mental illness and labelize a lot of things. I feel like every society has just had made it so that we have to label things. But I think in the end, I think, things have been starting to become better once I started to change my mindset on just take things day by day. And, you know, and another thing, I feel like, especially like when I go on TikTok, I see all these like sad TikToks about stuff like slideshows or like poetry talk or like sad edits. I feel like social media is a little bit to blame because we almost romanticize being sad, but and like a lot of times people would tell me to not look at those things because it's not like good for me, but like while there is some truth to it, I did also find comfort when I would see those slideshows and stuff like that. Um, and same with like listening to sad music and um, I think once you just become aware of your emotions and aware of your sadness, it's totally fine to like do all those things, It's totally fine to listen to Duster or Slow Dive or Radiohead, but I feel like once you just like tell yourself that like in the end everything will be okay, things will start to become easier and almost just like distract yourself, even though like you have a full day of distractions and you go to your bed right before you go to bed, all those emotions start hitting you again, that's totally fine, because that's something that I still struggle with a little bit. But I think you just have to like really push yourself on taking things day by day. I've said this probably like 3 times already in this video, but I think that's what has helped me uh become better, even though I'm not fully perfect yet, I still struggle with a lot of things, but I think once you just put yourself in the present instead of just reminiscing about the past or thinking or worrying about the future and just like living in your present moment, I feel like that helps a lot. And and yeah, and just like changing your mindset, you just like you don't have to make great changes. Just do like small things, Uh, but yeah, I think the biggest takeaway. I've said takeaway like so many times now, but I think the biggest thing was just once you become aware of your emotions and just fully process your emotions and just tell yourself that man, it'll be all right. Things will start to slowly become better and better. And and yeah.